Hey guys, I'm ProfitzTV bringing you another TradeSkillMaster 4 video teaching you again the basics of this add-on so you can improve, ultimately making your share of gold in the World of Warcraft. So let's get started. In this video, we're going to be talking specifically about operations, what they are, and how they interact with groups. So let's open up TradeSkillMaster. Prior video, we looked at groups and group structures. We looked at left-clicking on the group structure will show you the items in those groups, and then clicking on group operations is one way to get to operations, or from the core services on the top, you can click on operations, and then you can start working here. This is how I'm going to show you how to do operations. Let's get started. Notice that the core services auctioning, crafting, mailing, shopping, sniper, vendoring, and warehousing are all the operations that you can effectively control and maintain within TSM4. The basic functionality of each is we're going to go through each one and then learn how to associate the operation with the group. Both ways, from the group side and from the operation specifically. Let's start with the group side. So this first group that we created is called Armor. Clicking on Group Operations on the right side will bring you to this section, filling the right side of the window with all the operations that are available based upon those core functionality. Remember, an operation is simple instructions of what you want to do with those items in the group. Let's start with auctioning. Here's the actual auctioning operation called default, which by the way is the default operations for all of these different operations that are here. Comes with its own default operation, which effectively works 100% without any issues. So before you even start creating anything with operations, understand that the groups that you create will have these assigned automatically, and it will be functional. So from a beginner standpoint, all you need to do is create a group, click on that group, and then notice all the operations are assigned automatically. So let's go back up to our armor, and we want to change the default group or understand how to change the operations. On all of these, you have the cogwheel here. So let's click on the cogwheel, and it's going to bring us to the default operations section. So notice now we jumped from groups to operations. Underneath the auctioning, because that's a specific group that I clicked on that I wanted to link to. Auctioning. Default cogwheel. It moves me to the operations section, specifically under auctioning in that default operation. So here you notice we have three sections. We have the details, we have the posting section, and we have the canceling section. This is the functionality that's associated uniquely to auctioning. Now notice every operation, if I click on crafting, the crafting default has its own settings, which are different from auctioning. And likewise, mailing has its own settings, shopping has its own settings, sniper, vendoring, and warehousing accordingly. So going back up to the default, again, these are collapsible, very easy to expand and select. Click on the default. And in the right side, let's go over the details in the details section of this default auctioning operation. Very simple. Don't get confused with the lingo. You'll eventually get it. But just know fundamentally that groups have operations assigned to them. And these blue are the default operations for groups. So the first one under the details section is general options. You notice it's broken into general options, management, and then group management. So the first section is match stack size. This basically means that you want to match the size that's in the actual posting operation here. By default, this is off because you can manage it in the posting side. Do you want to ignore auctions by duration? This means that if when you're going to post within this auctioning operation, if you come across an item that's about to expire or within these certain types of duration criteria or ranges, do you want to ignore that and continue to post accordingly? Blacklisted players are exactly that. Left click in here, type the name of the player that you want to blacklist, and then we'll put it down here for you. Blacklisted players means you completely want to ignore what they have on the auction house. You don't want to even see their auctions, and you don't want it to impact your way that you're going to be posting your minimum, normal, and maximum ranges. You can remove blacklisted players just by clicking on the X next to the name, and it's gone. Management operations, ignore operation on faction realm. So you can select the specific type that you want to ignore, and then ignore operations on characters. You can do the same thing to granularly control how you want to manage the operations and what do you want to ignore. Group management is apply operation to a certain group. This is where you actually assign the group membership. So notice when we first came over from groups, we're underneath the armor section, and then we clicked on the auctioning cogwheel to move us to the operations section. So this is basically what it did for us. So notice here we have armor associated. So now if I X this out, now it's not associated with any groups. So visually, you have a pretty good picture right away of what operations are assigned to what groups. And to re-add it back, you click on the drop-down. All your group structure will show here. You click on armor, and then now you can see that it's associated. Note, too, that you can also have multiple groups assigned to the same operation. So this gives you the flexibility to create an operation once and then share across, if you so choose, multiple groups based on what you're posting and what you want to have happen. So for now, we're just going to associate it to armor. So we're going to X out these, which will remove it. And now we're completed with the details section. Moving to posting, this is the majority intelligence, if you will, of what you want to pay attention to here, because this is going to actually post things to the auction house in a specific way based on how you select this criteria. So the first thing you're going to notice, you have a posting section, and then you have a price section, which covers some of these minimum, maximum, and normal ranges, which you used to see in prior versions of TradeSkillMaster. So the first option you want to select is what you actually want it to post at. So you want the auctions to be 12 hours, 24 hours, or 48 hours. Very simply, just click on it, and it's pretty easily visually pleasing, if you will, to know where it's currently set at. The set post cap is basically how many of the items you want to post or maintain on the auction house at one time. So let's say, for example, we're posting stacks of cloth, right? And you're farming a certain spot, and the stacks of cloth that you get from farming that spot in an hour produces thousands of them, right? You don't want to post thousands of the same item on the auction house. Even in materials, you want to kind of control your supply and post what you know is going to sell, and you're not going to get undercut and the thing just sits there and you're wasted gold just posting it, right? So here you can see on the right-hand side of the thresholds. So I could post potentially a maximum of 200 here. So you basically click in here and you enter the number that you want to post. Again, that's the post cap of the item. So this is where the knowledge of understanding the items in your groups come into play. So if this was set at 200 and I'm posting transmog items, that means if I had the same item 200 times, it would list it. That's not appropriate, right? So if you were posting eaches in regards to items, armor, maybe enchants, and you don't want to post any more than one, you'd set this to 1. Again, this is the post cap, the maximum amount that you want to have of that item on the auction house. So let's use the example of cloth. So let's say I want to have 10 stacks, if you will, on the auction house. The next section is what's the size of the stacks that you want to have. So again, currently, if I'm posting craftable items, maybe I want to post 3 of that item, but the stack size, of course, is it's 1. But if it's a stackable item like cloth, going back to our other example, I want 10 total stacks of 200 on the auction house. You can see a max here goes to 1,000 because there are certain items in the game that go to 1,000, but the majority of the materials that you're going to be working with goes to a 200 stack. So this means I'm going to have 10 stacks of wool cloth or linen cloth of 200 stacks, 10 of them. If I wanted to still go old school and say, no, I want to post in 20 stacks, you can post in 20 stacks there. The cool thing about this is now, prior, you had to have individual operations to be able to manage stack counts, and you would see multiple operations, meaning I want to post at 200, I want to post at 100, then I want to post at 50, then I want to post at 20, and so forth. This allow partial stack button manages that for you based upon these two criteria here. So by clicking this, notice it's white. By turning it or left clicking on it, it's going to flag it or toggle it on. This means I want to allow partial stacks, meaning if this is 200, think of a cloth that we have in mind, linen cloth. I want to post 10 stacks of 200, and let's say I have 215 total. Allowing this toggle here will say, okay, we're going to post 10 stacks of 200, and then we're going to post the 15 as a partial stack. So this is optional for you. I like to keep it on when I'm posting materials because if I do run across oddball numbers, I'm going to post it anyway. Again, knowing the items in your groups, you might want to select this differently, but I would suggest it if you're doing it for raw materials. Allowing this would be more efficient, and you would sell the leftovers, if you will, out of your stacks. These next two basically are allowing you more flexibility over those items. So taking into account, let's say we're farming a large spot, we get 10 stacks of 200 for linen cloth. And oh, by the way, I use bags. I'm a tailor and I use some of the linen cloth to make bags. I always want to make sure that I'm maintaining at least 50 in my bag because I do something with that 50. That will make sure that your inventory in your bag always maintains 50. This is, again, flexible to anything you want. You can see the max ranges on the side. By default, this is 0. The next section is don't post after X amount of expirations. This allows you, again, thinking about transmog here, if your transmog was set to, let's say, 1, and then obviously their each is 1, make sure you hit enter at the end. Otherwise, you'll see it won't take the value that you just changed. Here, let's say I want to post my transmog up to 10 times. And then I want the operation to actually flag me saying it's not going to post because you exceeded the amount of expiration for that item. So every time an item expires, TradeSkillMaster records that for you. And we'll talk about that in the ledger section in another video. So this parameter is used effectively if you want to manage the amount of time that you want to post the item, be notified, and then you can take action whether you want to vendor the item, whether you want to warehouse the item and put it into a bank, send it to someone else, disenchant it. It gives you some flexibility to know that. By default, it's 0. The price settings is where we start getting into some interesting tips here. So the first couple sections are optional. There means 100% by default, meaning when you have a bid and a buyout, what percentage do you want the bid to start at? And typically, folks leave this at 100%, meaning if I post an item at 50 gold, the bid is going to be 50 gold. If you change this in any way, and again, you can just left-click in here and change this to any percentage you want, this will actually change the bid price to be that percentage of the buyout price. So be very careful here, because there's people out there that snipe off bids. If the bid is extremely lower than the buyout, they'll try to bid snipe you and then take the item from you based on that. By default, this is 100%, so you are protected from any type of error right out the gate. This next section is for you of how much do you want to actually undercut the person by when you post items. By default, it's 1 copper. So if you want to do 1 silver or one gold, it's G, S, and C appropriately. Again, make sure you hit the enter, and then make sure that the value there is exactly what you want. Again, understanding your items is important because some items, 1 gold is an extreme difference between 1 copper on the range there, especially when you're posting smaller items. 1 gold is a vast amount. So by default, you're protected. It undercuts by 1 copper. You really don't need to make these changes unless you want to do something unique. The next section and the biggest part of these posting are the operations formulas. What are you going to do with the minimum price, the maximum price, and the normal price? Luckily, you don't have to be a math genius, because I know I'm certainly not a math genius. The values are pre-filled for you. Yes, the values are pre-filled for you with a very good value that will set you for a long time if you don't want to get into custom prices. So by default, these values are here. I'm going to go over them very quickly because we'll talk about custom pricing in another advanced video. So the minimum price, again, by default, is basically saying the max amount. I'm going to take 25% of these average values here and these formulas, and then take into consideration vendor sell as well. So you're never really you're never really going below vendor sell price on that aspect. This is minimum price. Keep it the way it is. If this looks foreign to you, do not change these values. Keep it the way it is. Other people have very complex advanced formulas that can go pretty much into do anything you want, including some of the new if greater than or if less than type functionality that TradeSkillMaster folks specifically provided for people who want to do very unique things and have super granular control over pricing. By default, if you're a beginner, don't touch it, leave it like it is. The next part that you'll see below minimum price is when below minimum, this drop down here, left click on it, you have some options to make a decision on. By default, it means post none, which means if you post an item on the auction house and it's below this minimum price formula, it's going to keep the item in your bag. If you wanted to change that, left click on this, drop down and select, you can say if it's less than my minimum price, I want it to post at my minimum price. I want to post at my maximum price. I want to post at my normal price, or I want to ignore auctions below minimum and just post. By default, keep it at post, do not post. That gives you the greatest flexibility to not lose your item or to mispost it if someone's lowballing the market. The next section is set maximum price. Again, this is 5 times average of these price sources here with taking into consideration 30 times vendor sell. Again, don't mess with these formulas. Keep it as is. And notice if it's above maximum, by default, it's going to post at your normal price. Again, this is changeable based on what you want to do. I would suggest keeping it at normal. The last price feature, guys, is the normal price. This is what you'll typically be going back and forth between. And again, this is the default price. Keep it as is 2 times the average of these formulas, taking into consideration vendor sell as well. So the way that pricing works is it's going to post, and if an item's there, it's going to have a range or a floor and a ceiling, a low and high range. If an item's between your minimum price and your normal price, it's going to figure that out and post accordingly based upon this undercut amount. If it's higher than what your normal price is, it's going to go and scale as close as it can get up to that item that's above your normal price without exceeding or going over your maximum price. Otherwise, it will post at your normal price. Or you can say, otherwise, post at my maximum price. This is basically here to protect you, again, against folks who are driving the market up extensively or driving the market down too much. It's giving you the option to maintain the item and post it accordingly. So that's the complete posting section. Very flexible, very powerful. There's actual custom price sources that are out there that are available by multiple people in the community, especially if you go to Wow Economy, the Reddit sites. There's several streamers out there that have custom formulas. If you want to use those, just be careful, understand what you're doing. If you don't understand a price source, go to the author of that and ask questions to absolutely make sure you know what's going on with your inventory. The last section, folks, is canceling. This is how you interact with auctions based upon some events that could happen to them. The first one is if your auctions are undercut, do you want to cancel when you go through a cancel operation? Do you want to identify those and cancel those who have undercut your auction? If your item's undercut, toggling this, it will flag it to be canceled. And then when you do the cancel operation, you can actually remove that, pick it up from your mailbox, and go back and repost it. This is a cool one here too. Cancel to repost at higher. By default, it's on. What I recommend here, and again, this is optional, is I turn this off. What this means is if you post an item on the auction house and you go through a cancel scan, basically meaning, and we'll talk about this in another video, a cancel scan basically means what's my current status of items I posted on the auction house? Am I undercut? Can I actually cancel that item to repost at a higher value, which is this field right here? That basically means the item that was on there before is not there anymore, so I could technically cancel the item and repost, so it would effectively post at my normal price again, or maybe inflate up to my maximum price, giving me more profitability. keep in mind now on lower priced items, you are initially paying for a listing fee and so forth. So you want to make sure those are calculated in your pricing as well. By default, these two are on. Keep posted. This is the maximum amount that you want to post, and then repost higher threshold. These values are here more on the advanced side if you wanted to post based upon some efficiencies that you can gain from profit. Repost higher threshold if it's a gold or more. You have some reset functionality here if you want to go back to default, again with the ellipses. Other than that, that is the functionality covered underneath the auctioning operation for the group. If we go to crafting, crafting again has its own functionality based upon the operation. Again, going back to the group structure, there's a couple ways we can associate with it. We can click on group operations, go to the crafting section. We can click on the cogwheel here, or we can go to the operations section and expand it here. It's going to take you to the same spot. It all depends how you want to go there. So from the crafting default, you notice here, restart quantity, price settings, management options, and group management are all a part of this section of the crafting page. So going real quick over these, minimum restart quantity. Again, you see the maximum. It's the same as the other values. This is all preference based. How many do you want to keep as a minimum restock, as a maximum? You can set the max amount of profit that you want when you're going through the crafting operations by toggling this on and off. By default, it's on. By default, it's 100 gold. You can adjust this accordingly based on how much minimum profit you want to make when you're thinking about creating the item. Underneath the price settings, again, by default, this is disabled. As a beginner, you do not want to enable the override of some of these basic operations. Keep them as is. So by default, this is turned off. But you do have the capability of updating or changing the formula that's been provided for you from TradeSkillMaster developers for the craft value of the method that you want to use. If you wanted to change that, if you get that from someone else, you can left click here and actually change that based on how you want to do it. Otherwise, keep it enabled. It protects you from erasing it. Keep it default. Management operations are the same as prior. If you wanted to ignore certain factions or certain tunes in this, you can do that. And again, the group association at the bottom is currently to the base group. If you have other groups, you can actually assign those directly, or same as the management, you can remove them by clicking the X. And that is the default crafting operation. We'll have another video that goes over and puts this into play, but for right now, we're going to go through all of these operations at a high level. The mailing operation gives you the ability to manage the functionality of who gets sent what based upon these criteria. So you have your target character here that you can enter, whatever the name of your character is. You can enter that here. So my character's name is Superfoot. Hit enter. This is the amount, again, thinking about the items, the quantity of what you want to keep. Keep this amount of what you want. Set maximum quantity. You only want to send X amount to this player through the mailbox. Here's your maximum quantity, and here's your limits. So for instance, going back to the cloth idea, I want to keep 50 in my bag. Otherwise, I want to send, let's say 5,000. I want to send the rest of the max amount of cloth that I have in my bag. This is good because if you're farming in certain spots and you gain an astronomical amount of resources or mats, this quickly gives you the ability through a mailbox to send all of those items in that group over to someone else that you can manage later. Restart target to max quantity. You can do restarking. You can change this to, again, where you actually want to acquire it from, the sources to include in the restock. If you wanted to go and restock your guy, again, getting you mats to be able to craft things. Management operations are the same. Group management is the same. By default, again, you want to keep these values to 0 unless you specifically want to do something with crafting or with sending items to your appropriate guy. Again, we're still thinking about the armor group that we're in. Go into shopping. This gives us the ability to set specific instructions for when we want to buy these items. Shopping is buying, auctioning is selling. So buying items from this group, these are what we want to set here for general options, and the management and group options are the same. So maximum auction price per item. This is exactly what we want to type here. What's the maximum price that we want to do for an item? By default, it's 1, but you can put a percentage here. You can put a formula here. Let's say we don't want to pay any more than 1,000 gold, or we don't want to pay any more than 10% of DB markets. You can do additional types of information here per item. By default, show auctions above maximum price. So based upon this price formula that we have here, what do you want to actually do? You want to show something that's above that to give you some flexibility to at least see or make decisions if you want to buy it or not, if it's closer to your maximum or not. Neat stack sizes. You want to actually sell things from that group in a certain amount of size. How much, again, going back to what do you want to hold? Where do you want to restock from when you go and actually get for shopping? So pretty powerful, very functional. Go into Sniper, one of my favorites. Sniper gives you the ability to scan the last page of the auction house, which is technically the last or most current items posted, and it allows you the ability based upon this formula to be alerted of that and then make decisions whether you want to buy it or not. So this pricing formula here, again, is the default formula that's available, that comes with it. And again, as you can see, I have in a notepad. It's pretty complex, and it basically uses the new if greater than the resource or the source of the value that it's pulling from, in this case DB region market average, and then based upon the value in gold, a certain percentage that you would buy from. So for instance, if it's 5,000 golds, I want to buy it anything 30% or lower, 2,000 20% or lower, 1,000 10% or lower, and so forth. This is automatically pre-filled for you. You don't have to change anything. If you do change it, again, make sure you know exactly what you're doing. Note, too, that Sniper settings, or this operation, is, like everything else, assigned to specific groups. So if you wanted to add and specifically do specific operations for your armor group or your weapons group or top 10 group, whatever your groups are, you can select and add that here, and it will actually prompt you. This group already has a maximum of operations. Would you like to replace it? Replace. And then now that operation's been replaced for weapons. So going underneath the weapons group operations, coming down here, you notice I have the default section that's been set up to that group. Weapons and now base. Oh, I made a mistake. I don't want it associated with that. Exit out, and you're back down to normal. Very powerful functionality here. We'll be talking about this specifically, Sniper and to win, in another video. Overview. Very powerful section. Keep it as is if you're a beginner. The vendoring operation basically allows you to go to a vendor and handle how you want to exchange or sell things at the vendor. Quite simply, do you want to enable buying? Do you want to enable selling? And some of the values here that you want to do with those items. Management operations and group are the same. Enable buying. Simple toggle. By default, it's on. Again, your restock quantities, you're always taking that into consideration. Restock where you want to restock from. Sell options is you want to enable selling, meaning if you have certain things in your bag, you want to enable selling. How do you want to do that? Do you want to keep a certain quantity? Do you want to sell? Again, this is the minimum expires that we set prior. Do you want to enable this item to be sold if it reaches a certain amount of expiration? The default market value that's considered. Maximum market value. C, 0 copper, disables it. And this basically says if the value is over a certain amount, don't vendor it. So it's this value or below, maximum market value. Destroy value is the same thing. The value that you want to actually set on that to be considered to be destroyed, to hold it and destroy. This toggle option here gives you the ability to sell soulbound items. So you want to make sure if you don't want to disenchant You want to sell soulbound items that you acquire. Enable this toggle, and this will actually allow you to sell it through the vendor. The last operation is warehousing. This gives you the ability to move funds back and forth between your bank, your bags, and so forth. You have your move quantity settings, your restock settings, and again, management and group management, as you know, are the same. Set move quantity. Again, all these are toggleable. You can toggle them on based on what you want to do. So set move quantity to X amounts as you move towards the banks or your bags, your inventory, to and from. So set size to 4 bags. Keep set in quantity. Keep set a certain amount in the bank. Toggle. These are all toggleable with the max amounts you can see. By default, as you know, they're all off. So you have to know what you're doing, what you want to move. And this is basically usable if you want to move large amounts of inventory. By hand, you wouldn't set up an operation like this to effectively move 2 or 3 items. This is for moving bulk, the warehousing component. But you can do it the way that you want it. TradeSkillMaster is pretty flexible to allow you to do anything you want with items and groups. Restock quantities, again, if you want to restock certain things from the bank or your bags, you can set these values here with max stats. So that is the operations overview, folks. Again, basic high level. You know that your groups are items in your groups. You have items in your groups. You have operations of these types assigned to your groups of items based on what you want to do. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope this gives you an overview of the operations. We will be diving deeper into individual operations in the future to make sure that you can go as technical as you want and as advanced as you want. We'll use some examples. So thank you very much for watching. My name is ProfitzTV. Have a great night. Happy gaming and happy earning.